In a distant corner of the galaxy, far from Earth, an empire ruled with an iron grip. The Voran Dominion had stretched its claws across countless star systems for centuries. They were not peaceful rulers, but conquerors who thrived on war and domination. Their ships, sleek and menacing, patrolled the stars like wolves hunting prey. The weaker species they encountered either became slaves or were wiped out entirely. For the Voran, there was no room for mercy. Only strength mattered. At the heart of this empire stood Calver, their emperor. He was a towering figure, both physically and in power. His eyes burned with ambition, and his voice carried the weight of command. From his massive flagship, the Iron Crown, he directed campaigns that expanded his dominion further into the galaxy. No one dared to oppose him. Or so it seemed. Meanwhile, on Earth, humanity was struggling to survive. Centuries of environmental disasters and resource wars had left the planet scarred. Cities were crumbling, and people lived in fear of what tomorrow might bring. But even in these dark times, hope flickered. Scientists worked tirelessly to develop new technologies, while soldiers trained to protect what little they had left. Among them was Captain Ryan Carter, a man known for his bravery and sharp mind. Ryan was not like other officers. He didn't seek glory or fame. Instead, he wanted to make a difference. As a child, he had watched his hometown destroyed by rising seas and violent storms. That memory stayed with him, fueling his determination to keep others safe. Now, as the captain of the experimental battleship USS Vanguard, he carried the hopes of billions on his shoulders. The Vanguard was unlike any ship humanity had ever built. It was fast, heavily armed, and equipped with cutting-edge technology. Its cloaking device allowed it to vanish from enemy sensors, and its plasma cannons could cut through almost anything. Yet, despite all its promise, the ship had never seen real combat. Many wondered if it would live up to its reputation when the time came. While Ryan commanded the Vanguard, another key figure worked behind the scenes. Lavra Bennett was a civilian scientist, brilliant but unassuming. She spent most of her days in dimly lit labs, surrounded by monitors and schematics. Her job was to create weapons capable of defending Earth against threats no one truly understood. Though she rarely ventured outside her lab, her contributions were vital. Without her innovations, humanity would have been defenseless. One fateful day, everything changed. A faint distress signal reached Earth from deep space. It came from a human colony ship called the Odyssey. The message was garbled, but one thing was clear: the ship had been attacked. Survivors described strange, alien vessels descending upon them without warning. The attackers were ruthless, destroying everything in their path. Few managed to escape, and those who did were traumatized. When news of the attack reached Earth, panic spread quickly. Humanity had always assumed they were alone in the universe. To learn otherwise and under such violent circumstances was terrifying. The United Earth Council convened an emergency meeting to decide how to respond. Some argued for caution, suggesting that sending a fleet into unknown territory would be reckless. Others believed action was necessary, fearing that ignoring the threat could lead to extinction. Admiral Lewis Hayes, a grizzled veteran with decades of experience, sided with the latter group. "If we don't act now," he warned, "we'll regret it later. These aliens won't stop at one colony. They'll come for us next." After much debate, the Council agreed to send the USS Vanguard to investigate. Ryan and his crew were given orders to gather intelligence and, if possible, rescue any remaining survivors. As the Vanguard prepared for departure, tension filled the air. The crew knew they were heading into the unknown, facing dangers they couldn't predict. Still, they remained focused. Each member had their role to play, and they trusted Ryan to guide them through whatever lay ahead. Before leaving, Ryan met with Lavra to discuss the mission. She handed him a data chip containing blueprints for a new weapon system she'd been Working on. It's not fully tested, she admitted, but it might give you an edge if things go south. Ryan thanked her, promising to use it wisely. As they parted ways, he felt a pang of worry. What if the weapon failed? What if the aliens were too powerful? Shaking off these thoughts, he reminded himself to stay calm. Doubt wouldn't help anyone. The journey into deep space was long and tense. The Vanguard moved silently, its cloaking device masking its presence. Along the way, Ryan studied maps of the region, searching for clues about where the Odyssey might have gone. He also reviewed recordings of the distress signal, listening for details that might reveal more about the attackers. Every piece of information mattered. Finally, after weeks of travel, the Vanguard arrived at the last known coordinates of the Odyssey. What they found chilled them to the bone. The remains of the colony ship floated lifelessly in the void, torn apart by weapons fire. Debris drifted silently, painting a grim picture of the massacre that had occurred. Ryan ordered his crew to scan the wreckage for survivors, but deep down, he doubted anyone could have survived such devastation. As engineers examined the debris, they discovered something unusual. Fragments of alien technology were embedded in the wreckage. These devices were unlike anything humanity had ever seen, advanced beyond comprehension. Laura's team back on Earth would need to study them carefully to understand how they worked. For now, Ryan instructed his crew to collect samples and store them safely. Just as the Vanguard finished its investigation, alarms blared throughout the ship. Sensors detected multiple contacts approaching rapidly. Ryan's stomach sank as he realized what was happening. The aliens had returned. On the view screen, the enemy ships appeared. They were sleek and angular, exuding menace. Their hulls shimmered with an eerie light, making them look almost alive. Ryan ordered the Vanguard to activate its cloaking device, hoping to avoid detection, but the aliens weren't fooled. Somehow, they locked onto the Vanguard's position and opened fire. Explosions rocked the ship as energy beams tore through space. Ryan shouted commands, directing his crew to evade the attacks. "Return fire," he barked. The Vanguard's plasma cannons roared to life, sending bursts of energy hurtling toward the enemy. One alien ship exploded in a brilliant flash, but the others pressed on relentlessly. Amidst the chaos, tragedy struck. Lieutenant Daniel Foster, one of Ryan's closest friends, was manning a critical station when a stray blast hit the bridge. Without hesitation, Daniel threw himself in front of Ryan, shielding him from the impact. By the time medics arrived, it was too late. Daniel was gone. Grief threatened to overwhelm Ryan, but he forced himself to focus. There would be time to mourn later. Right now, his crew needed him. With renewed determination, he led the Vanguard in a daring retreat. Using the cloaking device and quick maneuvers, they slipped away from the alien fleet, narrowly escaping destruction. Back on Earth, the crew delivered the alien tech to Lavra, who immediately began analyzing it. Her findings confirmed Ryan's worst fears. The aliens, whom they now identified as the Voran, possessed technology far superior to anything humanity had. However, she also uncovered a potential weakness. The Voran relied heavily on energy shields that could be disrupted by specific frequencies. If they could exploit this flaw, humanity might stand a chance. Armed with this knowledge, Ryan and Admiral Hayes presented their case to the United Earth Council. They argued that humanity must prepare for war. Surrender was not an option, when the survival of the species hung in the balance. After heated discussions, the Council reluctantly agreed. Factories ramped up production of new ships and weapons, while civilians volunteered to join the fight. Earth united under a single purpose: to resist the Voran and reclaim the stars. As preparations continued, Ryan reflected on the road ahead. He knew the coming battle would test humanity's limits. Sacrifices would be made, and lives would be lost. But he also believed in the resilience of his people. Together, they would face whatever challenges awaited them. And perhaps, Just perhaps, they would emerge victorious. Little did Ryan know, this was only the beginning. The Voron Dominion had ruled the stars through war for centuries. But soon, a human battleship would rise to challenge their empire and change the course of history forever. The victory of escaping the Voron fleet was hollow. The crew of the USS Vanguard returned to Earth with heavy hearts. Daniel Foster's sacrifice weighed on everyone, especially Ryan Carter. He couldn't shake the image of his friend throwing himself in front of the blast, shielding Ryan from harm. It was a reminder of the cost of war, something humanity had avoided for decades, but now faced. Head-on. Laura Bennett worked tirelessly in her lab, analyzing the alien technology recovered from the wreckage of the Odyssey. She barely slept, driven by the urgency of the situation. The pieces of alien tech were strange, glowing faintly with an inner light that seemed almost alive. Laura ran tests, disassembling components and studying their energy signatures. Her findings confirmed what she had suspected. The Voron relied heavily on energy shields to protect their ships. These shields were nearly impenetrable unless disrupted by specific frequencies. Ryan visited Laura frequently, bringing updates from the military and checking on her progress. Despite the grim circumstances, their conversations brought a small sense of normalcy. Laura admired Ryan's calm demeanor under pressure, while Ryan respected her dedication and brilliance. Over time, they began to trust each other more deeply, forming a bond that went beyond professional necessity. Laura explained her discovery to Ryan one evening as they stood in the dim glow of her lab equipment. "Their shields are powerful," she said, holding up a fragment of the alien tech. "But they have a flaw. If we hit them with the right frequency, we can weaken or even disable their defenses." Ryan nodded thoughtfully. "How long will it take to retrofit the Vanguard with weapons that can exploit this weakness?" he asked. Laura hesitated before answering. "A few weeks, maybe less if we push hard." Time was not on their side. Reports poured in daily about increased Voron activity near human-controlled space. Scouts spotted enemy fleets moving closer to Earth's borders, and rumors spread of massive invasion forces being assembled. Admiral Lewis Hayes called an emergency meeting with Ryan and Laura to discuss strategy. "We need every advantage we can get," Hayes said gravely. "If these aliens decide to invade, we'll be outnumbered and outgunned." With Hayes' support, Ryan convinced the United Earth Council to prioritize upgrading the Vanguard. Factories across the globe shifted into overdrive, producing new weapons and armor plating for the ship. Engineers worked around the clock, installing Laura's prototype frequency disruptors onto the plasma cannons. Meanwhile, Ryan trained his crew relentlessly, preparing them for the battles ahead. He drilled them on evasive maneuvers, shield coordination, and precision targeting. Every member of the crew knew their role, and morale remained high despite the looming threat. As Earth prepared for war, the Voron Emperor Calver watched developments closely. From the bridge of the Iron Crown, he studied data feeds showing humanity's mobilization efforts. His advisors warned him that humans might pose a greater threat than initially anticipated. "They adapt quickly," one advisor noted. "Their technology is primitive, but their creativity is dangerous." Calver dismissed these concerns with a wave of his hand. "Creativity means nothing without strength," he growled. "We are the rulers of the stars because we crush those who oppose us. These humans will learn that lesson soon enough." With a flick of his wrist, he ordered the invasion fleet to accelerate its timetable. Earth would fall, and humanity would join. The ranks of conquered species. Back on Earth, civilians rallied together to support the war effort. Factories churned out supplies, volunteers signed up for service, and scientists collaborated on new inventions. Even children contributed by collecting scrap metal and organizing fundraisers. Humanity's unity was fragile but inspiring. People understood that failure meant extinction. And they refused to give up without a fight. One evening, Ryan sat alone in his quarters aboard the Vanguard, staring at a photo of his hometown. It showed a bustling street filled with laughter and life, a stark contrast to the desolation left behind after the floods. He clenched his fists, vowing silently to protect what remained of Earth. No matter the cost, he would ensure that humanity had a future. The day finally came when the Vanguard was ready. Lavra joined Ryan on the bridge for the final inspection. She looked exhausted but proud. "This ship is our best chance," she said softly. Ryan placed a hand on her shoulder. "It's not just the ship. It's the people who built it, the people who fly it, and the people waiting for us back home. We're fighting for all of them." Admiral Hayes delivered a stirring speech to the crew before departure. "You are the tip of the spear," he declared. "Every shot you fire, every maneuver you make, brings us closer to victory. Remember why you're here, for Earth, for humanity, and for the generations to come." The crew erupted in cheers, their spirits lifted by his words. The Vanguard launched into space, leading a small fleet of support ships. Their mission was clear: intercept the Voran invasion force and delay their advance until Earth's defenses were fully operational. It was a suicide mission, and everyone knew it, yet no one hesitated. They believed in Ryan and in themselves. As they approached the edge of human-controlled space, sensors detected the enemy fleet. Hundreds of Voran ships loomed in the distance, their ominous shapes blotting out the stars. Ryan ordered the cloaking device activated, hoping to buy time for reconnaissance. The Vanguard slipped silently through the void, observing the enemy's movements. Suddenly, communications crackled to life. A garbled transmission came through, originating from a nearby asteroid field. Ryan listened intently, deciphering fragments of the message. It was a distress call from survivors of another colony ship. Against better judgment, Ryan decided to investigate. Saving lives was worth the risk, he reasoned. Plus, rescuing survivors could provide valuable intelligence about the Voran. The Vanguard navigated carefully into the asteroid field, using the rocks as cover. There, they found a battered transport vessel hiding among the debris. Its hull was scorched, and its engine sputtered weakly. Ryan hailed the ship and received a shaky response. "This is Captain Elena Ruiz of the Pioneer. We're all that's left of our convoy. Please help us." Ryan ordered his crew to dock with the Pioneer and evacuate its passengers. As the survivors boarded the Vanguard, Ryan spoke with Captain Ruiz. She recounted how her convoy had been ambushed by the Voran, leaving only her ship intact. "They're relentless," she said bitterly. "They don't stop until everything is destroyed." Ryan thanked her for the information and promised to escort the Pioneer to safety. Before they could leave, however, alarms blared throughout the Vanguard. The cloaking device had failed, exposing their position. Within moments, Voran fighters swarmed toward them, firing wildly. Ryan barked orders, directing his crew to defend the Pioneer at all costs. Plasma cannons roared, blasting enemy ships out of the sky. But the Voran kept coming, overwhelming the smaller human fleet. Desperation set in as the battle raged. The Vanguard sustained heavy damage, and several support ships were lost. Ryan realized they couldn't hold out much longer. Thinking quickly, he ordered the Pioneer to jump to hyperspace, ensuring the survivors escaped. Then, he turned the Vanguard toward the largest concentration of Voran ships, activating Laura's frequency disruptors. The first salvo struck true, disabling the shields of a massive Voran cruiser. Encouraged, Ryan pressed the attack, targeting key vessels in the enemy formation. The disruptors proved devastating, turning the tide of the battle temporarily. But the Voran adapted quickly, spreading their forces to minimize losses. Just as hope began to fade, reinforcements arrived. A squadron of Earth's newest battleships emerged from hyperspace, flanking the Voran fleet. Caught off guard, The aliens faltered, giving the humans an opening to regroup. Ryan seized the moment, coordinating a counterattack that drove the Voron into retreat. When the dust settled, the crew of the Vanguard cheered. They had won a crucial victory, buying Earth precious time to prepare for the next wave of attacks. Ryan allowed himself a brief smile before turning his attention to repairs and casualty reports. The road ahead would still be long and difficult. But for the first time, humanity had proven it could stand against the Voryn. As the Vanguard limped back toward Earth, Ryan reflected on the battle. They had survived, but at great cost. Lives had been lost, ships destroyed, and scars etched into the hearts of everyone involved. Yet amidst the pain, there was also pride. Humanity had fought and won against an empire that had ruled the stars for centuries. Ryan glanced at Lavra, who stood nearby, reviewing data from the battle. She caught his eye and offered a small, weary smile. Together, they had taken humanity's first step toward freedom. But Ryan knew the Voron wouldn't give up easily. This was only the beginning of a larger conflict, one that would test the limits of courage, ingenuity, and resilience. The victory against the Voron fleet in the asteroid field was a turning point, but it came at a heavy price. The USS Vanguard returned to Earth battered and bruised, its hull scarred from countless impacts. The crew limped home with mixed emotions: pride in their success, but sorrow for the lives lost during the battle. Ryan Carter stood on the bridge as the ship entered orbit, staring out at the blue-green planet below. Earth looked peaceful from space, a stark contrast to the chaos humanity now faced. Lavra Bennett greeted Ryan as he disembarked. Her face was pale from lack of sleep, but her eyes sparkled with determination. "We need to upgrade the disruptors," she said without preamble. "The Voron adapted too quickly last time. If we want to stay ahead, we have to improve." Ryan nodded. He trusted Laura's judgment completely. She had already proven herself invaluable, and her innovations were the reason they had survived the first encounter. Admiral Lewis Hayes called an emergency meeting to discuss the next steps. The council chambers buzzed with tension as military leaders, scientists, and politicians debated strategy. Some argued for a defensive stance, fortifying Earth's borders and waiting for the Voron to strike. Others, including Ryan, believed humanity needed to take the fight to the enemy. "If we wait, they'll overwhelm us," Ryan insisted. "We've shown we can hurt them. Let's hit them where it hurts before they recover." Hayes agreed with Ryan. "We don't have the luxury of playing it safe," he said. "Earth isn't ready for a full-scale invasion. We need to buy ourselves more time." After hours of heated discussion, the council approved a bold plan: launch a series of preemptive strikes against key Voron targets. The goal was to cripple their supply lines and disrupt their command structure. It was risky, but necessary. Preparations began immediately. Factories worked around the clock to repair the Vanguard and retrofit other ships with Laura's frequency. Disruptors. Engineers installed additional armor plating and reinforced shield generators. Pilots trained tirelessly, practicing maneuvers designed to exploit the Voron's weaknesses. Civilians pitched in wherever they could, volunteering to assemble weapons, transport supplies, or care for wounded soldiers. Ryan spent much of his time overseeing these efforts, ensuring everything ran smoothly. He visited factories, spoke with workers, and inspected newly upgraded ships. Despite his grueling schedule, he made time to check on Lavra. Her lab became a second home, cluttered with tools, schematics, and half-finished prototypes. One evening, as she tweaked a disruptor module, Ryan brought her a cup of coffee. "You're pushing yourself too hard," he said gently. "Take a break." Lavra shook her head. "There's no time for breaks," she replied. "Every second counts. If I can make these disruptors stronger, we might actually stand a chance." Ryan didn't argue. He knew how important her work was and how much it meant to her. Instead, he stayed with her, offering quiet support as she worked. Meanwhile, Calver watched humanity's movements with growing anger. The failure at the asteroid field had been humiliating, and reports of Earth's mobilization only fueled his rage. From the bridge of the Iron Crown, he summoned his top commanders. "These humans are pests," he snarled. "They think a single victory makes them equals. They will learn their place." His advisors proposed a two-pronged attack. One fleet would target human colonies on the outer rim, while another would strike directly at Earth. Calver approved the plan, ordering his forces to move swiftly. "Crush them," he commanded. "Leave nothing but ashes." Back on Earth, intelligence operatives intercepted communications, hinting at the impending assault. Ryan and Hayes studied the data carefully, piecing together the Voran strategy. "They're trying to divide us," Ryan observed. "If we split our forces to defend the colonies, Earth will be vulnerable. But if we focus on protecting Earth, the colonies will fall." Hayes frowned. "We can't abandon the colonies. Not only would it cost millions of lives, but it would also weaken our position in the long run." After weighing the options, they decided to split their forces, a risky gamble, but one they hoped would pay off. Ryan volunteered to lead the defense of the colonies, knowing it would be the harder task. Hayes agreed, trusting Ryan's leadership and tactical skill. The night before departure, Ryan met with Larva one last time. She handed him a small device resembling a wristwatch. "It's a portable disruptor generator," she explained. "If you get into trouble, it might give you an edge." Ryan slipped it onto his wrist, touched by her thoughtfulness. "Thank you," he said softly, "for everything." As the Vanguard prepared to launch, civilians gathered to see the crew off. Families waved goodbye, children held up handmade signs, and bands played patriotic songs. The atmosphere was bittersweet hopeful, yet tinged with fear. Ryan addressed the crowd briefly, thanking them for their support. "This isn't just our fight," he said. "It's everyone's fight. Together, we'll protect what matters most." The journey to the colonies was tense. The crew knew they were heading into danger, outnumbered and outgunned. Still, morale remained high. They had faith in Ryan and in each other. Along the way, they encountered scattered groups of refugees fleeing the Voran advance. Ryan ordered the Vanguard to escort them to safety, even though it slowed their progress. "We're not leaving anyone behind," he told his crew firmly. When they reached the first colony, the scene was devastating. The once thriving settlement lay in ruins, its buildings reduced to rubble. Survivors huddled together, traumatized and desperate. Ryan sent teams to evacuate the civilians while the Vanguard engaged the Voran fleet. The battle was fierce, with both sides taking heavy losses. But thanks to Laura's disruptors, the humans managed to hold their ground. Word of the resistance spread quickly among the colonies. Emboldened by the Vanguard's success, local militias joined the fight, using guerrilla tactics to harass the Voran. Ryan coordinated these efforts, turning the tide in several key engagements. Slowly but surely, the humans began to push back. Back on Earth, Hayes faced challenges of his own. The Voran fleet assigned to attack the planet arrived sooner than expected, catching the defenders off guard. Cities burned as energy beams rained down from orbit, and panic swept through the population. But humanity refused to surrender. Civilians fought alongside soldiers, using whatever weapons they could find. Even children joined the effort, delivering messages and tending to the wounded. Lavra worked nonstop, repairing damaged equipment and improving existing technology. When a Voran boarding party breached a nearby facility, she armed herself with a makeshift weapon and held them off until reinforcements arrived. Her bravery inspired those around her, earning her widespread admiration. Though she preferred working behind the scenes, she proved she could hold her own in a fight. Despite the odds, Earth held firm. The combined efforts of Hayes' forces and civilian volunteers inflicted significant damage on the Voron fleet, forcing them to retreat temporarily. News of this unexpected victory reached Ryan, lifting his spirits. For the first time, it seemed possible that humanity might truly win this war, but Ryan knew better than to celebrate prematurely. The Voron were still a formidable foe, and Kelver wouldn't rest until Earth was destroyed. As the vanguard regrouped, Ryan reflected on the sacrifices made so far. Friends had died, homes had been lost, and countless lives had been shattered. Yet amidst the destruction, something remarkable had emerged: unity. Humanity had come together in ways no one thought possible, driven by a shared desire to survive and thrive. Ryan glanced at the disruptor on his wrist, a reminder of Laura's ingenuity and dedication. Together, they had taken humanity's first steps toward freedom, but the road ahead would be long and difficult. The Voron weren't done fighting, and neither were the humans. As the vanguard prepared for its next mission, Ryan felt a renewed sense of purpose. They had proven they could stand against an empire that had ruled the stars for centuries. Now it was time to take the fight to the heart of that empire, to show the Voron that humanity would not be crushed. The tide of the war had shifted, but Ryan Carter knew better than to let his guard down. The victories at the colonies and Earth were significant, but they were far from decisive. The Voron still held the advantage in numbers and resources. Humanity's resistance had bought time, but it wasn't enough. To truly end the threat, they needed to strike at the heart of the Voron Dominion, the Iron Crown itself. Ryan gathered his senior officers aboard the USS Vanguard for a briefing. The mood was tense as he outlined the plan. "We've weakened their forces, but Kelver is still out there," Ryan said, pointing to a holographic map of the Voron Empire. "If we want to stop them for good, we need to take him down. That means infiltrating the Iron Crown and disabling it." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Storming an enemy flagship was risky, especially one as heavily guarded as the Iron Crown, but Ryan didn't see another way. "I know it's dangerous," he continued, "but if we can get inside, we can cripple their command structure. Without Kelver, the Voron will fall into chaos." Lieutenant Emily Ross, the ship's tactical officer, raised a hand. "How do we even get close to the Iron Crown?" "It's surrounded by their entire fleet," Ryan nodded. "That's where the disruptors come in. We'll use them to create a gap in their defenses. Once we're inside, we'll split into teams. One will disable the ship's core, while the other secures the bridge." Lavra Bennett stood nearby, listening intently. She had been working on modifications to the disruptors, making them more powerful and precise. "These upgrades should give us the edge we need," she said, holding up a small device. "But you have to be careful. If the disruptors overload, they could take out your team as well." Ryan thanked her and turned back to the crew. "This mission will test everything we've got. But remember why we're doing this. For Earth, for the colonies, and for everyone who's counting on us." The room erupted in murmurs of agreement. Despite the danger, no one hesitated. They trusted Ryan to lead them through whatever lay ahead. The journey to the Voron homeworld was long and perilous. Along the way, the Vanguard encountered patrols and supply convoys, which they avoided using the cloaking device. Ryan spent much of the voyage reviewing strategies and preparing his team. He drilled them on every possible scenario, ensuring they were ready for anything. Lavra stayed busy fine-tuning the disruptors and running simulations to predict how the Voron might respond. As they approached the final jump point, tension filled the air. Everyone knew what was at stake. Failure meant not just their deaths, but the collapse of humanity's resistance. Success, however unlikely, offered a chance to turn the war in their favor. Ryan addressed the crew one last time before entering enemy territory. "Stay sharp, stay focused, and trust each other. We've come this far because we fight as one. Let's finish what we started." The Vanguard emerged from hyperspace near the Voran homeworld, its arrival triggering alarms across the enemy fleet. Dozens of ships turned toward them, weapons charging. Ryan ordered the disruptors activated, targeting the largest vessels surrounding. The Iron Crown. Beams of energy lanced out, striking the Voran shields. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then, with a blinding flash, the shields faltered, creating a narrow corridor through the enemy lines. "Now!" Ryan shouted. The Vanguard surged forward, weaving between the stunned Voran ships. Plasma cannons roared, picking off smaller vessels that tried to block their path. Explosions lit up space as the humans fought their way closer to the flagship. The Voran regrouped quickly, launching waves of fighters to intercept the intruders. But the Vanguard, as superior speed and agility, allowed it to evade most of the attacks. Finally, they reached the Iron Crown. Ryan gave the order to dock, and the boarding party prepared for battle. Armed with disruptor rifles and grenades, they moved swiftly through the airlock, encountering heavy resistance almost immediately. The corridors of the alien ship were dimly lit and labyrinthine, filled with hostile soldiers and deadly traps. Ryan led the charge, his instincts honed by years of combat. The fighting was brutal. Voran warriors were larger and stronger than humans, relying on brute force to overwhelm their opponents. But Ryan's team compensated with teamwork and precision. Disruptor fire tore through the alien shields, leaving them vulnerable to follow-up attacks. Slowly but surely, they pushed deeper into the ship. During the assault, they stumbled upon a group of enslaved aliens being held in a detention bay. Among them was a young Zarnian named Sira, whose species had been subjugated by the Voran centuries ago. She pleaded with Ryan to free them, promising to help in exchange. After a brief debate, Ryan agreed. The liberated slaves joined the fight, providing valuable intel about the ship's layout and weaknesses. With Sira's guidance, the team split into two groups. One headed for the engineering section to disable the ship's core, while the other moved toward the bridge to confront Kelver. Ryan led the latter group, determined to face the Emperor himself. As they neared the bridge, the resistance grew fiercer. Voran elites, clad in advanced armor, ambushed them repeatedly. Each skirmish cost lives, but Ryan refused to retreat. When they finally breached the bridge, Kelver awaited them, flanked by his personal guard. Towering over his throne, the Emperor radiated menace. "You dare challenge me?" he bellowed, his voice echoing through the chamber. "You insignificant insects are nothing compared to the might of the Voran." Ryan stepped forward, his weapon trained on the Emperor. "Your empire is built on fear and destruction. It ends here." Kelver laughed, a deep rumble that sent shivers down the spines of his guards. Bold words from a doomed man. The battle began in earnest. Kelver's guards charged, forcing Ryan's team to scatter. Lasers and disruptor fire crisscrossed the room, lighting up the dim space. One by one, the guards fell, until only Kelver remained. The Emperor discarded his weapon and lunged at Ryan, relying on sheer strength to overpower him. The two men clashed, trading blows in a desperate struggle. Kelver was a formidable opponent, his size and power giving him the upper hand. Ryan staggered under the assault, pain shooting through his body with each hit. But he refused to give up. Drawing on every ounce of training and determination, he countered with quick strikes aimed at the Emperor's weak points. Blood dripped from cuts on his face, but his focus never wavered. Finally, Ryan spotted an opening. Dodging a massive swing, he drove his disruptor blade into Kelver's side. The Emperor roared in agony, collapsing to his knees. For a moment, Ryan hesitated, staring into the dying ruler's eyes. There was a flicker of something regret, perhaps, or resignation. "Your empire falls with you," Ryan said quietly. With a final thrust, he ended the Emperor's life. On the engineering deck, The second team succeeded in disabling the Iron Crown S-Core. Alarms blared as the ship began to lose power. "We've done it!" someone shouted over comms. "Get back to the Vanguard, we're pulling out." Ryan and his team raced back through the crumbling flagship, dodging collapsing walls and panicked Voran soldiers. Sira guided them to a secondary airlock where the Vanguard waited. As they boarded, the Iron Crown erupted in a massive explosion, taking much of the Voran fleet with it. Back aboard the Vanguard, the crew cheered wildly. They had done the impossible. They had defeated the Voran Emperor and crippled his empire. Ryan allowed himself a brief smile before turning his attention to the wounded. Many had fallen during the mission, and their sacrifices weighed heavily on him. As the Vanguard limped away from the wreckage, Sira approached Ryan. "Thank you," she said softly, "for freeing us, for giving us hope." Ryan nodded. "This isn't just our victory. It belongs to everyone who fought against the Voran." Though the immediate threat was gone, Ryan knew the war wasn't over. Remnants of the Voran forces still roamed the galaxy, and rebuilding would take years. But for the first time, humanity had a real chance at peace. Together with their newfound allies, they could forge a brighter future. As the Vanguard set course for Earth, Ryan reflected on the journey so far. They had faced unimaginable odds and emerged victorious. But the road ahead would require more than courage. It would demand compassion, unity, and resilience. Humanity had proven it could rule the stars through strength. Now it was time to show they could lead through wisdom and cooperation. The destruction of the Iron Crown sent shockwaves through the galaxy. News of Calver's death spread quickly, sowing confusion and fear among the Voran forces. Without their emperor to command them, the once unified empire began to fracture. Some factions surrendered, while others turned on each other in power struggles. For humanity, it was a moment of triumph but also one of uncertainty. Ryan Carter and the crew of the USS Vanguard returned to Earth as heroes. Crowds lined the streets, cheering and waving flags as the battered battleship descended into orbit. The ship bore the scars of countless battles, but it had become a symbol of hope, a reminder that even the smallest spark could ignite change. Ryan stood on the bridge, watching the celebrations below with mixed emotions. He felt pride in what they had achieved, but the weight of loss lingered heavily in his heart. Lavra Bennett waited for him at the landing site, her face lighting up when she saw him step off the ramp. She hugged him tightly, tears welling in her eyes. "You did it," she whispered. Ryan shook his head. "We did it. None of this would have been possible without you or the crew." Sira, the young Zarnian who had helped them infiltrate the Iron Crown, accompanied Ryan and Lavra back to Earth. Her presence drew curious stares from the crowd, but she held her head high, determined to represent her people. Over the days that followed, Sira became an ambassador of sorts, sharing stories of the suffering endured under Voran rule and advocating for unity among the liberated species. Her words resonated deeply with humanity, reminding them that freedom was not just for themselves, it was for everyone. As the dust settled, Earth began the long process of rebuilding. Factories shifted from producing weapons to creating tools and materials needed to restore damaged cities. Farmers planted crops on lands reclaimed from years of neglect. Schools reopened, and children returned to classrooms, eager to learn about the stars and the future they might help shape. Humanity had survived the brink of extinction, and now it was time to heal. Ryan and Lavra played key roles in this recovery effort. While Ryan worked with military leaders to establish a new interstellar coalition, Lavra focused on developing technologies that could benefit all species, not just humans. Her labs buzzed with activity as she collaborated with scientists from across the galaxy, sharing knowledge and ideas. Together, they created systems to purify water, grow food in hostile environments, and provide energy to planets still recovering from Voran occupation. Despite these efforts, tensions remained. Not all former Voron territories welcomed humanity's leadership. Some saw the humans as conquerors, no different from the Voron they had overthrown. Others resented the rapid changes sweeping through the galaxy, fearing they would lose their traditions or identities. These grievances simmered beneath the surface, threatening to boil over if left unchecked. To address these concerns, Ryan and Lavra traveled to various star systems, meeting with local leaders and listening to their grievances. They emphasized cooperation over domination, promising aid and support rather than imposing rules. Slowly, trust began to form. Liberated species joined the coalition, contributing resources and expertise to the shared goal of rebuilding. Even some former Voron soldiers laid down their arms, seeking redemption by helping repair the damage they had caused. During one such visit, Ryan and Lavra encountered a group of enslaved aliens who had been rescued during the war. Among them was an elderly Krillin named Torin, whose wisdom and calm demeanor commanded respect. Torin spoke of the cycles of oppression and violence that had plagued the galaxy for centuries. "Every empire rises and falls," he said, his voice steady. "But true peace comes not from power, but from understanding." His words stayed with Ryan and Lavra, shaping their approach to leadership. They realized that defeating the Voron was only the first step. To prevent another empire from rising, they needed to foster relationships based on mutual respect and shared goals. It was a daunting task, but one they embraced wholeheartedly. Back on Earth, Admiral Lewis Hayes oversaw the transition from wartime footing to peacetime governance. He worked closely with the United Earth Council to dismantle authoritarian structures within the military and promote transparency. Civilians were encouraged to participate in decision-making processes, ensuring that policies reflected the needs of all people, not just those in power. Ryan and Lavra grew closer during this period, their bond deepening as they faced challenges. Together, late nights spent discussing strategies often turned into quiet moments of reflection, where they shared their hopes and fears for the future. Lavra admired Ryan's unwavering sense of duty, while Ryan found comfort in Laura's optimism and creativity. Though neither voiced it aloud, they both knew their partnership extended beyond professional necessity. As months passed, signs of progress emerged. Trade routes reopened, connecting distant worlds and fostering cultural exchange. Artists, musicians, and storytellers traveled between planets, sharing their crafts and bridging divides. Children born after the war grew up knowing only peace, their imaginations filled with dreams of exploration and discovery rather than fear and conflict. Yet shadows loomed on the horizon. Rumors surfaced of a mysterious figure rallying remnants of the Voron loyalists and disenfranchised groups under a banner of vengeance. Calling themselves the Shadow Accord, they vowed to reclaim the galaxy from human tyranny. At first, these reports were dismissed as exaggerated or baseless. But as sightings of their ships increased, it became clear that the threat was real. Ryan received intelligence about the Shadow Accord during a routine briefing. A scout ship had encountered one of their vessels near the edge of human-controlled space. The ship was heavily armed and equipped with technology salvaged from the Voron fleet. More concerning was the message broadcast by its captain: "Your so-called peace is an illusion. The stars belong to the strong, and we will take them back." Admiral Hayes ordered immediate action. "We can't let them gain momentum," he warned. "If we ignore this, we risk losing everything we've built." Ryan agreed, though reluctantly. He had hoped to leave combat behind, focusing instead on diplomacy and reconstruction. But the Shadow Accord posed a direct challenge to the fragile stability they had achieved. Lavra returned to her lab, working tirelessly to develop countermeasures against the Accord's weapons. She analyzed data collected by scouts, searching for vulnerabilities. Meanwhile, Ryan prepared the Vanguard for another mission. Though the ship had seen better days, it remained humanity's most advanced vessel, and its best chance against the growing threat. As departure approached, Ryan addressed his crew. "This won't be easy," he admitted. "The Shadow Accord is dangerous, and they're determined to destroy us. But remember why we're here. We didn't fight the Voron just to hand the galaxy over to another tyrant. We fought for freedom for everyone." The crew responded with determination, ready to face whatever lay ahead. Lavra joined Ryan on the bridge for the launch, her expression resolute. "Be careful out there," she said, handing him a small device. "It's a fail-safe disruptor. Use it if things go wrong." Ryan nodded, slipping the device into his pocket. "Thank you," he replied, "for everything." As the Vanguard soared into the stars, Ryan reflected on the journey so far. Humanity had risen from the ashes of despair to stand among the stars. They had proven that strength alone wasn't enough, that compassion, unity, and resilience were equally vital. Now, as shadows gathered once more, Ryan knew the true test of their character lay ahead. The battle against the Shadow Accord would define the future of the galaxy. Would humanity's newfound ideals prevail, or would fear and hatred drag them back into the cycle of war? Ryan didn't have all the answers, but he was certain of one thing: they would face the challenge together as one. The USS Vanguard moved silently through the void, its crew tense and alert. Ryan Carter stood on the bridge, staring at the swirling stars ahead. The mission to confront the Shadow Accord weighed heavily on his mind. He knew this wasn't just another battle. It was a test of everything humanity had fought for. If they failed, the fragile peace they had built would crumble, plunging the galaxy back into chaos. Lavra Bennett's voice came over the comms, breaking the silence. "Ryan, we're picking up unusual energy readings near your position," she said. Her tone was calm but urgent. "It could be their weapon systems. Be careful." Ryan nodded, even though she couldn't see him. "Understood," he replied. "We'll stay sharp." The Vanguard approached the edge of human-controlled space, where reports had placed the Shadow Accord's fleet. Sensors revealed a massive structure floating in the darkness, an orbital platform bristling with weapons. It looked like a fortress, designed to dominate any who dared approach. Ryan studied the readings carefully, noting the energy signatures Lavra had warned about. Whatever powered the platform, it was unlike anything they'd encountered before. "This is it," Ryan said to his crew. "Their base of operations. If we can disable that platform, we'll cripple their ability to strike at us." Lieutenant Emily Ross, the tactical officer, leaned forward. "How do we get close enough without them tearing us apart?" Ryan hesitated, then turned to Sira, the Zarnian ambassador who had joined the crew. "Sira, you've seen their tactics before. Any ideas?" Sira studied the holographic display, her brow furrowed in thought. "The Accord relies on overwhelming force," she said finally. "But they're arrogant. They won't expect a direct assault. If we hit them fast and hard, we might catch them off guard." Ryan nodded. "That's what I was thinking. We'll use the disruptors to target their shields, then send boarding parties to take out critical systems. Once inside, we disable the core." The plan was risky, but there was no time for hesitation. Ryan gave the order to engage. The Vanguard surged forward, its cloaking device masking its approach. As they neared the platform, alarms blared across the enemy fleet. Dozens of ships turned toward them, weapons charging. Ryan activated the disruptors, unleashing beams of energy that tore through the Accord's defenses. Shields flickered and fell, creating an opening for the Vanguard to slip through. The battle erupted in full fury. Plasma cannons roared as the Vanguard exchanged fire with enemy ships. Explosions lit up the void, debris spinning wildly in every direction. Ryan shouted commands, directing his crew to evade incoming attacks while returning fire. The ship shuddered under the impact of energy blasts, but its reinforced armor held firm. "Boarding teams ready." Ryan called. A group of soldiers led by Lieutenant Ross prepared to deploy onto the platform. Armed with disruptor rifles and grenades, they moved swiftly through the airlock, encountering heavy resistance almost immediately. The corridors were dark and narrow, filled with hostile fighters determined to defend their stronghold. But the humans pressed forward, driven by the knowledge that failure meant disaster. Meanwhile, Ryan led a second team deeper into the platform, heading for the central core. Along the way, they faced wave after wave of enemies, each skirmish more intense than the last. Ryan's disruptor blade flashed in the dim light, cutting down adversaries with precision. His movements were fluid, honed by years of combat, but exhaustion began to creep in. Still, he pushed forward, knowing the fate of the galaxy depended on their success. As they neared the core, the resistance grew fiercer. Accord elites, clad in advanced armor, ambushed them repeatedly. Ryan's team fought valiantly, but casualties mounted. One soldier, a young man named Marcus, took a fatal shot while covering Ryan's advance. "No!" Ryan shouted, kneeling beside him. Marcus smiled weakly. "Finish it, Captain," he whispered before closing his eyes forever. Grief threatened to overwhelm Ryan, but he forced himself to focus. There would be time to mourn later. For now, his duty was clear. With renewed determination, he led the remaining team into the core chamber. Inside, they found a massive machine pulsing with energy, its hum vibrating through the walls. At its center stood a figure cloaked in shadow, the leader of the Shadow Accord. "You're too late," the figure sneered, stepping into the light. It was a former Voran commander, his face scarred and twisted with hatred. "Even if you destroy this platform, others will rise. The galaxy will never accept your so-called peace." Ryan raised his weapon, his voice steady despite the anger boiling inside him. "Your kind thrives on fear and division. But we've proven that unity is stronger. You won't win, not today, not ever." The commander laughed bitterly. "Then let's see how far your ideals carry you." The fight was brutal. The commander wielded a blade charged with energy, striking with devastating speed. Ryan dodged and countered, his disruptor blade clashing against the glowing weapon. Sparks flew as metal met energy, each blow sending shockwaves through the chamber. Ryan's muscles burned with fatigue, but he refused to yield. Drawing on every ounce of skill and resolve, he feinted left, then struck with a decisive blow, slicing through the commander's defenses. The commander staggered, blood dripping from his side. For a moment, he stared at Ryan, his expression shifting from rage to something resembling respect. Perhaps you are different," he murmured before collapsing to the ground. Ryan stood over him, breathing heavily, his body aching from the fight. With the commander defeated, Ryan turned his attention to the core. Using Laura's fail-safe disruptor, he planted charges around the machine, setting a timer to ensure his team could escape. "Let's move," he shouted, leading the survivors back through the platform. Behind them, explosions rocked the structure, ripping it apart piece by piece. The Vanguard waited nearby, its engines roaring as it prepared to jump to hyperspace. Ryan's team boarded just as the platform imploded, sending a shockwave rippling through space. The Accord fleet scattered, their morale shattered by the loss of their leader and base of operations. Back aboard the Vanguard, the crew erupted in cheers. They had done it. They had stopped the Shadow Accord. Ryan allowed himself a brief smile before turning to assess the damage. Many had fallen during the mission, and their sacrifices would not be forgotten. But for now, the galaxy was safe. As the Vanguard returned to Earth, news of their victory spread quickly. Celebrations erupted across planets and colonies, people rejoicing at the end of the threat. Ryan and Lavra stood together on the bridge, watching the stars streak past. "It's not over," Lavra said softly. "There will always be challenges. Always be those who resist change," Ryan nodded. "But we've shown that peace is possible. That's worth fighting for." Lavra smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder. "And we've shown that strength isn't just about weapons or power. It's about standing together, no matter the odds." In the weeks that followed, humanity continued its work of rebuilding and uniting the galaxy. Former enemies became allies, working side by side to heal old wounds and forge new futures. Schools taught lessons of cooperation rather than conquest, and artists created works celebrating the diversity of life among the stars. Ryan and Lavra remained at the forefront of this effort, guiding humanity with wisdom and compassion. Though they knew shadows would always linger on the horizon, they also knew that light could overcome darkness if people chose to stand together. The galaxy had been ruled by war for centuries. But now, thanks to the courage and resilience of a few, it had a chance to be ruled by something greater: hope. And as long as that hope endured, the stars would shine brighter for everyone.